Greetings, my fellow freedom-loving sovereign thinkers. LL3's newest podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy mansions of South Florida. And today's date is Wednesday, May 15th, 2019. So let us begin. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Hopefully everyone's doing well. Yes, and I'm at Stash, located at 109 Southwest 2nd Avenue in the heart of the Hemisphere District of Fort Lauderdale, adjacent with Revolution Live and America's Backyard. So, I'm just kicking back a little bit. Someone asked me about the Iranian Saudi vessel being attacked or damaged by Iran, some oil fields, according to CBS News. And the question I asked for him is, how accurate is the story? That's one thing you got to look at. And there's a train coming by here, so one moment. Yeah, so usually, and I asked him, how accurate is it? That's the name of the game. And you have to really look at all these stories. Because remember, the Gulf of Tonkin, they said there was an actual attack, but it's been proven now. The CIA it's been declassified. It never occurred. And there's even claims, too, about the USS Maine being blown up, and they try to blame the Spanish government for that, and there was actually no proof. So how accurate is it? You gotta look at everything in an accurate perspective. That's why I always tell folks, including a good friend of mine, always observe responsibly. That is the key. Don't just consume everything what they tell you, because you can be bamboozled. We all been there, one way or the other. Swindled, shafted, screwed, etc. Always gotta pay attention, observe everything thoroughly, see how accurate it is. And I wouldn't recommend you Snopes.com or Fact Check and all that. They have their pros and cons. They got their human elements too. And I know the train's coming by, so we're gonna let that go through here. Cool. And so always gotta look at all sides. It could be a lot more complex than what we think. And of course, a person like myself, I'm not thrilled about imperialism or the U.S. being an empire. And I do agree on hands off Venezuela and Iran, etc. And I'm not saying I'm praising these two nations' governments as fantastic folks, okay? Just being fair. Foreign entanglements is a dangerous platform. And even the founding fathers and the authors of Feathers Papers and any Feathers Papers agree. So that's why you gotta say, look at everything a lot more broader than what it is. I know I'm ranting and be repeating myself. Forgive me. Speaking of interesting things here, I was looking at this last night, and I said I'll just do a show today, and it's mainly about the U.S. State Department deletes sadistic hit list boasting of Venezuela's ruin, and many of us question these things thoroughly, and there was even laws in the books. Of course, any means necessary to liberate Venezuela. Some law that the Congress approved and President Obama signed in 2014. And this is from the Gray Zone. Consortium News, they get some good articles in here, and they share the stuff. It says here, Gray Zone has obtained a list of key outcomes that include wrecking the nation's economy, destabilizing its military, and puppeteering its political opposition, reports Anya Parampil. So that's what she has to say here. On April 24th, 6 days before self-proclaimed Venezuelan interim president Juan Guaido's attempt to violently overthrow Venezuela's democratically elected government alongside a handful of military defectors, the U.S. State Department published a fact sheet that boasted of Washington's central role in the ongoing coup attempt. After realizing the criminal nature of its error, the State Department quickly acted to remove the page. The Gray Zone has obtained a full copy of the expunged report. The delete pages puts to bed any claims of Guaido's independence from Washington, as the State Department emphasized the fact that he announced his interim presidency in January. At the top of the section dedicated to breaking down the key outcomes of U.S. efforts with regard to Venezuela. It's like Operation Condor 2.0, right? U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Western Hemisphere Affairs, Kimberly Breyer, recently took to Twitter to claim since she became acting president, Juan Guaido has given tangible results to the people of Venezuela. Her tweet was accompanied into an infographic detailing alleged accomplishments of the powerless coup administration based on data complied by the legally defunct National Assembly, only governing body actually controlled by Guaido. But Venezuela's fact sheet post, then deleted days earlier by the State Department, told a dramatically different story. And I'm going to be reading that thing after this, finishing this article, so you folks can look at it yourselves. Economic hit list entitled U.S. Actions in Venezuela. The document boasted that U.S. policy has effectively prevented the Venezuelan government from participating in the international market and has led to the freezing its overseas assets. It read like a sadistic celebration of Washington's retribution against the Venezuelan population as a whole, a kind of collective punishment which is illegal according to Article 33 of the Geneva Conventions. Interesting there. The State Department gloated in the lead the fact that this policy has ensured that Maduro government cannot rely on the U.S. financial system to conduct business, noting key outcomes of U.S. actions include the fact that roughly $3.2 billion of Venezuela's overseas are frozen. It went on the boast that Venezuela's oil production fell to 736,000 barrels per day in March, substantially reducing government revenue. Interesting there. I know the banksters are getting off on this too. And continue on here. If I were the State Department, I wouldn't brag about causing a cut in oil production to 763,000 barrels per day, which is a 36% drop in just 2 months of February and March this year. Mark Raisbrook, co-director at the Center for Economic and Policy Research, told the Gray Zone. This means even more premature deaths than tens of thousands that resulted from sanctions last year. Riesbrot recently authored a bracing report which found that 40,000 Venezuelans died between 2017 and 2018 as a direct result of U.S. sanctions. Remember, folks, sanctions is an act of war. That's one of the reasons why Japan attacked the United States, because of oil sanctions on that country. That's one of the reasons. And don't get me wrong, like I said, when it comes to governments and so forth, I'm not lovey-dovey by either side, but you have the right to know the facts, okay? And, of course, we can say as well, Franklin Delano Roosevelt had knowledge of the Japanese attack and didn't do a damn thing about it, right? Absolutely. All right, continue on here. State Department patted itself on the back for announcing its preparedness to provide additional $20 million to initial humanitarian assistance to Venezuela. However, the CEPR report concluded that Trump administration sanctions implemented in August 2017 resulted in a loss of $6 billion in oil revenue over the ensuing year alone. While the State Department praised the opposition for providing medical and hygiene attention to over 6,000 Venezuelans, those numbers dwarf in comparison to 300,000 people. CEPR estimated to be a risk because of lack of access to medicines or treatment, including 80,000 people with HIV who've not had antiretroviral treatment since 2017, 16,000 people who needed dialysis, 16,000 people with cancer, and 4 million with diabetes and hypertension. Oh, that's nice, right? And it's funny, it's cute here. You see Guaido sworn in as Venezuela's interim president on January 23rd, and I like when he has this golden ridges around the flag of Venezuelan flag. What does that represent, folks? Maritime law, the law of the sea. In other words, the supposed Venezuela crisis response assistance touted by the State Department is not even a band-aid over the graping that would wound that U.S. unilateral coercive measures have inflicted on the country. In Raisbrook's view, the policy and outcomes prompted by the State Department and the disappeared document will merely lead to more cuts in imports of medicine, food, medical supply, medical equipment, and inputs necessary to maintain water, health, and sanitation infrastructure. Having denied the Venezuelan government the ability to provide for its own population, the U.S. has essentially promised that thousands more deaths will occur. The State Department did not respond to the Gray Zone's request for a comment on the fact sheet it deleted. Cute, right? Yeah, absolutely. So it says here, list of confessions in a recent interview with Gray Zone, Venezuela's ambassador to the United Nations, Samuel Moncada, characterized the deleted State Department fact sheet as a list of confessions. Imagine if any other country says it's proud of saying that we are destroying the economy of our neighbor. We are proud that we destroy the political system for our neighbor. We are proud that they are suffering. They are saying we are waging war against Venezuela, Moncada emphasized. The ambassador went on to accuse the U.S. of engaging in bullying rather than international diplomacy. The State Department's own fact sheet appears to support this accusation as it asserts diplomatic pressure resulted in fewer markets for Venezuelan gold. The document further highlighted U.S. actions that supposedly led more than 1,000 members of the military to recognize Juan Guaido as interim president and defected to Colombia, as well as stranding an estimated 25 crude oil tankers with 12 million barrels off Venezuela's coast. They say it's our key achievement, Moncada commented. They are saying that they are causing trouble in our military and inducing a military coup, which so far they haven't achieved, but they are working towards. If any other person says that themselves, the ambassador concluded, and you take that confession to court, they would be in prison. The State Department's fact sheet even frames recent decisions by the Organization of American States, Lima Group, Inter-American Development Bank, and European Union, the Club of Rome family, right? To either recognize or support Guaido's shadow administration as a U.S. achievement, highlight Washington's outsized influence within each of these supposedly international governing bodies. The decision mentioned to the EU and Lima Group is particularly noteworthy considering the United States is not a member of either organization. They say they are so far out of any normal parameters of decency, morality, legality, reason that they are dangerous. Moncada said of the Trump administration, they are a real threat to international peace and they are a real threat to my people. And that's very interesting there for sure. But when you actually look at this stuff, it's really disturbing. Okay, this is like right off of Operation Ajax and Condor's playbook on this fact sheet. It came out April 24, 2019 from their own website, state.gov, of course. And to go down further here, I like when it says, the United States policy on Venezuela is focused on ensuring free, fair, and transparent elections that bring prosperity and democracy back to the people of Venezuela. And I'm just trying to... It's like these folks don't have a clue. Okay, with all due respect, why bring democracy, which we're not considered one officially? Okay, it's like doublespeak. Good grief. In service of this goal, the United States has undertaken a series of strong policy actions since 2017 meant to pressure the former Maduro regime and support democratic actors. Now, like it says here, Venezuela crisis response assistance. The U.S. assistance to support the regional response to the crisis includes total regional support is more than $256 million, including more than $213 million in humanitarian response, $43 million in economic aid and development assistance. On January 24th, Secretary Pompeo announced the United States is ready to provide additional $20 million in initial humanitarian assistance to the people inside Venezuela. Yes, your tax dollars at work, my fellow Americans. Sanctions. The U.S. government has made over 150 designations of individuals and entities in Venezuela since 2011 via executive orders and the Kingpin Act. This includes 10 sets of designations in 2019 alone of multiple individuals, entities, and listings of properties. Such actions ensure the former Maduro regime cannot rely on the U.S. financial system for its destructive practices. And of course, it says here, Executive Order 13692, March 8, 2015, which was signed by our one great chosen leader, former President Barack Obama. targets those engaged in undermining democratic processes or institutions, acts of violence or human rights violations, actions against freedom of expression or peaceably assembled, public corruption by senior government officials, and status-based designations for being current or former Venezuelan government officials. There have been 80 actions, 73 individuals, 6 entities, 1 identified aircraft. And here's a couple more executive orders here. Executive Order 13808, which is on August 24, 2017, and Executive Order 13835, May 21st, 2018. Sanctions denying the regime financing and protecting the U.S. financial system from complicity and corruption expanded in 2018 to deny regime officials the ability to sell off public assets and fire sale prices at the expense of the Venezuelan people. The Kingpin Act Authority, 5 sanctioned individuals and 33 entities since 2017. Of course, Executive Order 13827, which came out March 19, 2018, prohibits dealings by U.S. persons in digital currencies, token and coin issued by, for, on behalf of the Maduro regime, including Petro. Here's another one, Executive Order 13850, gold sector identified November 1st, 2018, in 2019. Oil sector identified and PDVSA designated January 28th. Enviro Finance, Manasara Bank designated March 11th. Minerin designated March 19th. Bandez designated March 22nd. Oil sector shipping companies and vessels facilitating VZ Cuba oil trade designated April 5th and 12th. Targets people operating in any sector of the Venezuelan economy in which Maduro's regime plunders Venezuela's wealth for its own corrupt purposes. There have been 37 actions against 7 individuals, 30 entities, and a listing of 1 identified aircraft and 44 vessels since 2019. Interesting there, folks, huh? Yeah, we'll just continue on here. Multilateral meetings and resolutions. Organization of American States, or OAS. In June 2018, the OAS General Assembly declared Venezuela's May 2018 presidential election lacked legitimacy and did not meet international standards. How globalistic is that, right? The laws of nations, supposedly, right? Okay, but we'll continue on here. The OAS Permanent Council did not recognize the second term of Nicolas Maduro and underscore the constitutional authority of the democratically elected National Assembly. On January 24, 2019, the United States and 15 other OAS member states recognized Juan Guaido as the interim president of Venezuela. On March 27, 2019, the OAS passed, with 19 member states voting in favor, the resolution of humanitarian assistance in Venezuela. Another March 27th, OAS statements reiterated its stance against Russian incursions, calling them unconstitutional. The OAS approved a resolution to accept Guaido's nominee, Gustavo Torre, as Venezuela's representative to the Permanent Council on April 9th. United Nations, the UN. Since 2017, the United States has called for Venezuela meetings, including 2 emergency meetings in 2019. The United States put forward a UN Security Council resolution of Venezuela February 28th, which Russia and China vetoed. On April 10th, Vice President Pence delivered remarks at a special session of the UN Security Council on the crisis in Venezuela. The Lima Group, or LG, acronym. The group, originally 12 countries, now 14, formed in August 2017 to find a peaceful resolution to the crisis and lead regional efforts. They issued a 17-point declaration February 4, 2019, stating Argentina, Brazil, Canada, Chile, Colombia, Costa Rica, Guatemala, Honduras, Panama, Paraguay, and Peru reiterate their recognition and support for Juan Guaido as interim president of Venezuela. 13 countries joined a March 26 statement condemning military provocation in Venezuela following the arrival of Russian military personnel. Interesting there, in Venezuela. The group met in Chile April 15th and released a 17-point statement calling on the UN and the ICC, which is the International Criminal Court, an international organization for support, rejecting military intervention and urging unity of process among partners working to support Venezuela. Interesting there. And ICC, the International Criminal Court, and one thing about them I'm not crazy about, they believe in multi-jeopardy. I'll just leave it at that. You can look it up yourselves. Very complex. And I'll go on here. Inter-American Development Bank, or IDB, with U.S. support, the IDB Board of Governors approved a resolution recognizing Juan Guaido's representative, Ricardo Hausman, on March 15, 2019. In an effort not to recognize Hausman, China denied his attendance at the annual IDB meeting in Chengdu, even under U.S. and LG protest and threat of not attending. In response, China canceled the meeting. European Union, the EU International Contact Group, ICG, ended, which is an anchor for International Contact Group, ended a March 28th meeting in Quito, which is Ecuador, a declaration that proposed electoral observations and a roadmap to convoke elections in Venezuela. The European Parliament released a non-binding Venezuela resolution March 27th, reiterating support for Guaido, and the National Assembly calling for additional sanctions, decrying Cuban influence in Venezuela, and denouncing the Mero and West Cuisine detentions. All right, so it says here, the key outcome in 2019, Juan Guaido announced his interim presidency under Venezuela Constitution in January. 54 countries have recognized interim President Juan Guaido. Interim President Guaido appointed 36 country and 3 institution representatives. On February 5th, the U.S. Chief of Protocol received Carlos Vecchio's credentials as appointed ambassador of Venezuela to the United States. On April 8th, President Trump received the ambassador Vecchio's credentials in the White House credentialing ceremony. How nice a ceremony. Kumbaya, right? More than 1,000 members of the military have recognized Juan Guaido as interim president, defected from Venezuela, and entered Colombia, where they are receiving UNHCR and Colombian government assistance. U.S. refiner Citgo is now under control of the interim government. So who's going to benefit that, right? Roughly $3.2 billion of Venezuela's assets overseas are frozen. Venezuela's oil production fell to 736,000 barrels per day in March, less than half of production in March 2018, and substantially reducing revenue to the Maduro regime. 2 of 4 upgraders restarted after nationwide power outages rendered the upgraders inoperable. And the estimate 25 crude oil tankers with 12 million barrels remain stranded off the coast of Venezuela due to difficulties finding buyers. Reportedly, PDVSA is offering a 25% discount on a stranded crude, but require purchasers to load within port. The interim government continues to provide humanitarian assistance to the Venezuelan people. In the first 2 weeks of April, it hosted 18 health fairs in over 15 communities, providing medical and hygiene attention to over 6,000 Venezuelans. Diplomatic pressure resulted in fewer markets for Venezuelan gold. UAE, which is the United Arab Emirates, bank canceled the purchase of Venezuelan gold. And there are indications gold exports to Turkey have fallen. Sounds like the Bank of England, the World Bank, and IMF is actually pulling the strings in that one. Visa revocations. The United States has imposed visa restrictions on individuals responsible for undermining Venezuela's democracy, including numerous Maduro-aligned officials and their families. See, right there, the whole thing, democracy. Right there, the State Departments are full of crap. That's self-explanatory. Since January 10, 2019, the United States has revoked 718 visas, including 107 former diplomatic personnel. Visa records are confidential under U.S. law, therefore no additional information on these individuals can be provided. Okay, that is it. That is really it on that. Interesting. So, right there, folks. You read everything in this entirety. So, and why do you have to really, quote unquote, delete it? I know why, because they don't want no one knowing on what is occurring. And it's been suspicious for a long period of time, and this is a lot of great merit on this deleted report from the state.gov stating the United States is sticking their nose where it don't belong. Could we call this Operation Condor 2.0? I have to agree with Kurt Nemo on that one. Makes a lot of sense. Because, and can this result of blowback? Absolutely. This is why, my friends, let the people from Venezuela decide what their fate is. And I know it's a lot more complex than what it is. I'm not going around praising Chavez and Maduro, some of their actions. Okay, I'm not going to be worshiping these guys, saying they're the greatest things since sliced bread. But here's the one area folks got to look at. When you got corporations and puppet governments trying to run people's lives, you're going to get ticked off one day, all right? It's getting too obvious. Very bad habits. And people will figure it out. Nothing new at all. This is why I'm against these foreign entanglements. Be diplomatic. Have nations emulate us, not ram it down their throats. And it's like this: if I was in these areas that you want to use democracy, I say, you know what? You're fired. Bad vocabulary, un-American, unconstitutional. Show me in the Constitution where democracy is in that supreme law of the land. None whatsoever. And our tax dollars at work, folks. Do you like that? I don't. It's called, you know what's funny about the whole thing about socialism? They say, oh, we're going to end socialism. What do you call this? Sharing the wealth, like foreign aid. That's exceptional. We can't say that. So I'll always look at the bigger picture, folks. Hands off Venezuela. Period. Let the people decide. And I tell the folks down there, all the brothers and sisters down there as well, you want gun rights? Earn it. You got to show them who's boss. And don't say it can't be done. There's always a will and a way. Article 324, I have a high question in that. And we even look at the banksters, too. In my view, they ticked them off. They really ticked off the banksters, folks. That's why you always got to see these areas. When they nationalized the central banks, they left the fiat. Bad move. In good faith. And look what's happening. It should have been a lot better prepared than that. However, as the people of Venezuela decide, and one thing I noticed too, those cities are real damn dangerous. When you got stuff shut down, some people become zombies in due time. And I have folks in there, they praise Maduro and all that, that's fine. I have my disagreements, that's okay, but we have something in common. We're against imperialism. And how I'm looking at this, the banksters are calling the shots. The order is. Because people are not playing ball. It's happening in a lot of places, even here. So hope for the best for that nation and beyond. True peace, security, and spiritual prosperity shall prevail in due time. Alright, enough of that. I'm going to be right back, so stay tuned. Alright, next we're going to talk about, came out today, Consortium News. This one's entitled Pretexts for an Attack on Iran. It's by Ray McGovern. Ray McGovern probed the step up to U.S. belligerents towards a country posing the same non-existent strategic threat as Iraq. Very identical. An Iraq war redo is now in full play, with leading roles played by some of the same protagonists. President Donald Trump's National Security Advisor John Bolton, for example, who says he still thinks attacking Iraq was a good idea, co-starring his Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. God bless the empire. Exactly, right? The New York Times on Tuesday played a custom role in stoking the fires. Front page report that a Bolton's request, Acting Defense Secretary Patrick Shannon has come up with an update plan to send many as 120,000 troops to the Middle East should Iran attack American forces or accelerate work on nuclear weapons. The Times headline writer, at least through its appropriate To point to echoes from the past, the White House reviews military plans against Iran and echoes of Iraq war. By midday, Trump has denied the Times report, branding it fake news. Keeping them guessing seems to be the name of the game. Following the Iraq playbook, Bolton and Pompeo are conjuring the dubious intelligence from Israel to justify attacking this time Iran. For belligerent Bolton, this was entirely predictable. All this is clear. What is not clear to Americans and foreigners alike is why Trump wouldn't allow Bolton and Pompeo to use the same specious charges, terrorism and nuclear weapons, to provoke war with a country that poses just as a much strategic threat to the U.S. as Iraq did, that is to say, none. The corporate media, with the 2-decade memory loss and a distinct pro-Israel bias, offers to help toward understanding before discussing the main but unspoken in polite circles impulse behind the present step up to threats to Iran. Let's clear some underbrush by addressing the two limping but still preferred ostensible rationales, neither of which can bear close scrutiny. Number one, it isn't because Iran is the world's leading sponsor of terrorism. We are the veteran intelligence professionals of Fort Sandy shot down that canard a year and a half ago. In a memorandum for President Trump, we said, quote, this depiction of Iran as a world-leading state sponsor of terrorism is not supported by the facts. While Iran is guilty of having used terrorism as a national policy tool in the past, the Iran of 2017 is not the Iran of 1981. In early days of the Islamic Republic, Iranian operatives routinely carried out car bombings, kidnappings, assassinations of dissidents and of American citizens. That has not been the case for many years, unquote. 2. It isn't because Iran is building a nuclear weapon. A November 2007 U.S. intelligence estimate concluded unanimously that Iran had stopped working on a nuclear weapon in 2003 and had not resumed any such work. The judgment has been reaffirmed by the intelligence community annually since then. The Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, commonly known as the Iran Nuclear Deal, imposed strict, new, verifiable restrictions on Iranian nuclear-related activities and was agreed to do in July 2015 by Iran, the U.S., Russia, China, France, the UK, Germany, and the European Union. Interesting. So, folks, you gotta start reading these things to listen to some bobbleheads. All right. Even the Trump administration has acknowledged that Iran has been abiding by the agreement's provisions. Nevertheless, President Trump withdrew from the U.S. from the Iran nuclear deal on May 8, 2018, 4 weeks after John Bolton became his national security advisor. That's what happens when you have dipshits with the imperial status quo. Excuse my language, but that's how I see it. We prefer no outcome. Fair warning, what follows may come as a shock to those malnourished on the drivel in the mainstream media. The why, quite simply, is Israel. It is impossible to understand the U.S. Middle East policy without realizing the overwhelming influence of Israel on it and on opinion makers. A personal experience drove home how the strong public appetite is for the straight story. After I gave half-hour video interview to independent videographer Regis Tremblay 3 years ago, he entitled The Inside Scoop on the Middle East and Israel. Put it on YouTube, and it got unusually high number of views. Syria is an illustrative case point since Israel has always sought to secure its position in the Middle East by enlisting U.S. support to curb and dominate its neighbors. An episode I recounted in that interview speaks volume about Israel's objectives in the region as a whole, not only in Syria, and it includes an uncommonly frank exposition of Israeli objectives straight from the mouths of senior Israeli officials. It is a kind of case study empirical approach, much to be preferred to indulging in ponderous pronouncements or, worse still, so-called intelligence assessments. It's been It has long been clear that Israeli leaders have powerful incentives to get Washington more deeply engaged in yet another war in the area. This Israeli priority has become crystal clear in many ways. Reporter Jody Rodurin, writing from Jerusalem, had an important article in the New York Times on September 6, 2013, where she addressed Israel's motivation in a particularly candid way. Her article, titled "Israel's Backs Limited Strikes Against Syria," note that the Israelis have argued quietly that the best outcome for Syria's civil war, at least for the moment, is no outcome. Rodurin wrote, "For Jerusalem, the status quo, horrific as it may be from a humanitarian perspective, seems preferably to either a victory by Mr. Assad's government and his Iranian backers or strengthening of the rebel groups, increasingly dominated by the Sunni jihads." And it says here, this is a playful situation in which you need both teams to lose, but at least you don't want one to win. "We'll settle for a tie," said Elian Penkas, a former Israeli consul general in New York. "Let them both bleed, hemorrhage to death. That's the strategic thinking here. As long as this lingers, there's no real threat from Syria," unquote. If this is the way Israel's current leader looks at the carnage in Syria, they seem to believe that deeper U.S. involvement, including military action, is likely to ensure that there is no early resolution of the conflict, especially when Syrian government forces seem to be getting the upper hand. No longer Sunni and Shia are at each other's throats in Syria and in the vital region, the safer Israel calculus it will be. The fact that Syria's main ally is Iran, with whom has a mutual defense treaty, also plays a role in Israeli calculations. And since Iranian military support has not been enough to destroy those challenging Bashar al-Assad, Israel can highlight that in an attempt to humiliate Iran as an ally. Today, the geography has shifted from Syria to Iran. What's playing out in the Persian Gulf is a function of the politically dictated obsequiousness of American presidents to the policies and actions of Israel's leaders. The bipartisan phenomenon was obvious enough to under recent presidents like Clinton and Obama, but under Bush II and Trump, it went on steroids, including the born-again fundamentalist religious aspect. Only one need hardly mention the political power of the Israel lobby and the lucrative campaign donations from the likes of Sheldon Adelson. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is riding high, at least for now. Israeli influence is particularly strong in the lead to U.S. elections, and Trump had been acquitted of colluding with Russia. The stars seem aligned for very strong retaliatory strikes for terrorist acts blamed on Iran, but this is not altogether new. For those who are unfamiliar with former Israeli Minister Ariel Sharon, hold on, George W. Bush, I include in it below a very short but highly illustrative examples. Tonkin, Persian Gulf. Over the weekend, 4 vessels, including 2 Saudi oil tankers, were sabotaged near the Strait of Hormuz. Last evening, the Wall Street Journal was the first to report the initial U.S. assessment that Iran likely was behind the attacks and quoted a U.S. official to the effect that it confirmed this would inflame military tensions in the Persian Gulf. The attacks came as the U.S. deploys an aircraft carrier, bombers, and anti-missile battery to the Gulf, supposedly to deter what the Trump administration said is possibility of Iranian aggression. On Tuesday, Yemen's Houthi rebels, with whom Saudi Arabia has been fighting the bloody war for the past 4 years, launched a drone attack on Saudi east-west pipeline that carries crude into the Red Sea. This is not the first such attack. A Houthi spokesman said the attack was in response to Saudi aggression and genocide in Yemen. The Saudis shut down the pipeline for repair. Thus, the dangers in and around the Strait of Hormuz increase apace with the U.S.-Iran recriminations. This too is not new. Tensions in the Strait was very much on the Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman Admiral Mike Mullen's mind as he prepared to retire on September 30, 2011, 10 days before he told the Armed Force Press of his deep concern over the fact that U.S. and Iran have no formal communication since 1979. Even in the darkest days of the Cold War, we had links to the Soviet Union. We're not talking to Iran. so we don't understand each other. If something happens, it's virtually assured that we don't get it right. There will be miscalculations. Now the potential for an incident has increased markedly. Admiral Mullen was primarily concerned about the various sides: Iran, the U.S., Israel, making hurried decisions with, you guessed it, unintended consequences. With Pompeo and Bolton on the loose, the world may be well advised to worry even more about intended consequences from a false flag attack. The Israelis are masters at this. The tactics has been in the U.S. clandestine toolkit for a long time as well. In recent days, the Pentagon have reported tracking anomalous naval activity in the Persian Gulf, including loading small sailing vessels and missiles with other military hardware. Cheney down to the sea in boats. In July 2008, Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative journalist Seymour Hersh reported that Bush administration officials had held a meeting in the vice president's office in the wake of January 2008 incident between Iranian patrol boats and the U.S. warships in the Strait of Hormuz. The reported purpose of the meeting was to discuss ways to provoke war with Iran. Hersh wrote, "There was a dozen ideas pro-offered about how to trigger war. The one that interests me the most was why don't we build in our shipyard 4 or 5 boats like that it look like Iranian PT boats. Put Navy SEALs on them with a lot of arms, and next time one of our boats goes to the Straits of Hormuz, start a shoot-up, might cost some lives." And it was rejected because you can't have Americans killing Americans. That's the kind of that level of stuff we're talking about. Provocation. Silly maybe, but potentially very lethal. Because one of the things they learned in the January 2008 incident was the American public, if you don't get the right incident, the American public will support the bang bang kiss kiss, you know we're into it. Preparing the propaganda battlefield. One of Washington's favorite ways to blacken Iran and its leaders is to blame it for killing U.S. troops in Iraq. Iran was accused inter alia of supplying the most lethal improvised explosive devices, but sycophants like General David Petraeus, he went to the Bilderberg meetings, by the way, wanted to score points by blaming Iranians for still more actions. On April 25, 2008, Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman Admiral Mike Mullen told reporters that General David Petraeus would be given a briefing in the next couple of weeks that will provide detailed evidence of just how far Iran is reaching into Iraq to foment instability. Petraeus' staff altered the U.S. media to a major news event in which captured Iranian arms in Karbala, Iraq, will be displayed and then destroyed. But there was a small problem. When American munitions experts went to Karbala to inspect the alleged cache of Iranian weapons, they found nothing that could be credibly linked to Iran. This embarrassing episode went virtually unreported in Western media, like the proverbial tree falling in the forest with no corporate media to hear it crash. A fiasco is only a fiasco if folks find out about it. The Iraqis did announce that Iraq Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki have formed his own cabinet committee to investigate U.S. claims in an attempt to find tangible information and information based on speculation. With this windsock full of neoconservatives, anti-Iran rhetoric, Petraeus as CIA director nevertheless persisted and came up with even more imaginative allegations of Iranian perfidy. Think back, for example, to October 2011. In the outlandish White House spy feature at the time, the Iranian-American used car salesman drug cartel plot to assassinate the Saudi ambassador to the U.S. and hold your nose. More recently, the Pentagon announced it has upped its estimate of how many troops Iran killed in Iraq between 2003 and 2011. The revised death tally would mean that Iran is responsible for 17% of all U.S. troops killed in Iraq. Who will restrain the crazies? Pompeo stopped off in Brussels on Monday to discuss Iran with EU leaders, skipping that would have been the first day of a 2-day trip to Russia. Pompeo did not speak to the news media in Brussels, but European foreign ministers said they are urged restraint. British Foreign Minister Jeremy Hunt told reporters, "We are very worried about the risk of a conflict happening by accident, with an escalation that is unintended really on either side." British Army Major General Christopher Gahica was rebuked by U.S. Central Command for saying Tuesday there had been no increased threat from Iranian-backed forces in Iraq and Syria. A Central Command outspoken Captain Bill Urban said Gahica's remarks run counter to the identified credible threats available to intelligence from the U.S. and allies regarding Iranian-backed forces in the region. Although there is a growing resentment at the many serious problems tied to Trump's pulling the U.S. out of Iran deal, there is the EU's growing peak at heavyweights like Pompeo crashing their gatherings uninvited. I agree with Pepe Escobar's bottom line, and that it's politically naive to believe the Europeans will suddenly grow a backbone. There remains a fleeting hope that cooler heads in the U.S. military might summon the courage to talk some sense into Trump, in the process of making it clear that they will take orders from neither Pompeo nor from National Security Advisor John Bolton. But generals and admirals of today are far more likely to end to salute and follow orders. This is somewhat less forlorn hope that Russia will give Pompeo a storm warning in Sochi. A shot across the bow, so to speak. The last thing Russia, China, Turkey, and other countries want is an attack on Iran. Strategically, realities have greatly changed since the two wars in Iraq. In 1992, the afterglow of Desert Storm, First Gulf War, former General Wesley Clark, and asked Undersecretary of Defense for Policy Paul Wolfowitz about major lessons to be drawn from the Desert Storm attack on Iraq in 1991. Without hesitation, Wolfowitz answered, "We can do these things and the Russians won't stop us." That was still true for the second attack in Iraq in 2003. Of course, you got Wolfowitz on the far right there, right, with Colin Powell and Schwarzkopf, late Warren Schwarzkopf. But much has changed since then. In 2014, the Russians stopped NATO expansion to include Ukraine after the U.S.-sponsored coup in Kyiv, and in the years that followed, Moscow thwarted attempts by the U.S., Israel, and others to oust Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. No doubt Russian President Vladimir Putin would like to stop us before the Bolton-Pompeo team finds an Iranian casus belli. Initial reporting from Sochi, where Pompeo met with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and President Vladimir Putin on Tuesday, indicates that there is no meeting for the minds on Iran. Both Pompeo and Lavrov described their talks as frank, diplomatic speak for acrimonious. Pompeo was probably treated to much stronger warnings in private during the Sochi talks with Lavrov and Putin. Either on both or both may even have put into play the potent China crowd. Now that Russia and China have a relationship just short of military alliance, a momentous alteration of what the Soviets used to call for a correlation of forces. In my mind's eye, I can even see Putin warning, if you attack Iran, you may wish to be prepared for trouble elsewhere, including the South China Sea. Besides, the strategic balance is quite different from conditions existing each time you attack Iraq. We strongly advise you not to start hostilities with Iran. Under any pretext, if you do, we are ready at this time. And of course, Putin could only pick up the phone and simply call Trump. There's no guarantee, however, that a tough talk from Russia could stick an iron rod into the wheels of the juggernaut now rolling downhill to war in Iran. But failing that kind of strong intervention and disincentive, an attack on Iran seems to be all but assured. We were to be advising President Trump today. We VIPS will not alter a word. Train coming by. Hold on here. Okay, sorry about that, folks.
We VIPS would not alter in the recommendation at the very end of the memorandum for President George W. Bush. We sent him on the afternoon of February 5th, 2003, after Colin Powell addressed the UN Security Council earlier that day, quote, "No one has the corner on the truth, nor do we harbor illusions that our analysis is irrefutable or undeniable," as Powell had claimed his was. But after watching Secretary Powell today, we are convinced that you would be well served if you widen the discussion beyond the circle of those advisors clearly bent on a war for which we see no compelling reason and from which we believe the unintended consequences are likely to be catastrophic, unquote. So, I like to say this: stand down, President Trump. Stand down, Mr. Trump. Hashtag that, folks. And let that man know you're playing with fire. If I was the president, I could throw Pompeo and Bolton in there. Let's see how tough these clowns are. That's why, folks, I don't follow hype. I don't follow Lord and Savior in these presidential elections or any elections, but principles. That's what I support. You'd be better off doing that. If you follow the hype and go crazy and this person has a magic lamp theory, you'd be boldly mistaken. When these folks get in, you gotta be vigilant. Period. Be consistent. Say yes to a republic and no to an empire. Hands off on Iran as well. Bring all our troops home, damn it. I'm just tired of all the little kiddie games where all these folks that we should be playing with and have the banksters manifest in the military-industrial complex as well. Shoot it all down. No war in Iran. Period. Like I said before, I'm not praising their government either. The people in Iran gotta make a decision what they want. And that is it on this segment. Wow. Alright. I'm going to do one more here, which is short and sweet. This came from the Electronic Frontier Foundation, EEF.org. San Francisco takes a historic step forward in fight for privacy. The San Francisco Board of Supervisors voted today by 8-1 to make San Francisco the first major city in the United States to ban government use of face surveillance technology. This historic measure applies to all city departments. The Stop Secret Surveillance Ordinance also takes an important step, ensuring a more informed democratic process before the San Francisco Police Department and other city agencies may require other kinds of surveillance technology. Face recognition technology is a particularly pernicious form of surveillance, given this desperate propensity to misidentify women and people of color. Hey, white folks are in there too. Don't worry. Hey, just to give you guys an example. But, however, even those failures were addressed, we are at a pre-piece where there is technology could be used to track people in real time. This would place entire communities of law-abiding residents into perpetual lineup as they attend worship, spend time with romantic partners, attend protests, or simply go about their daily lives. It is encouraging to see San Francisco take this proactive step and anticipating the surveillance problems on the horizon and heading them off in advance. This is far easier than trying to put the proverbial genie back in the bottle after it causes harm. Today, 8-1 vote appears veto-proof, especially because two sponsors of the ordinance were not in attendance. However, the fight for the privacy and civil rights of the people of San Francisco is not over. EEF continues, and you got the train coming by, continuing to work with other members, coalition partners, lawmakers, and neighbors to urge Mayor Breed to sign into law the Stop Secret Surveillance Ordinance. Please join us in this fight by contacting Mayor Breed and express your support for the Stop Secret Surveillance Ordinance. And I'll be very frank, San Francisco has a lot of issues, but you know what? I gotta give them that. I think that's very important. Thank you, San Francisco, for choosing wisely. And don't get me wrong, I have differences with folks in government, but if they do something right, give them some love, okay? Doesn't mean you're going to be their buddies, but thank them. Because they don't want to be surveilled either. And we should spread this like fire. I think I should probably send this one to the city of Fort Lauderdale and say, hey, check this out. We got to fight these things, folks. If it's on a national level, we can counter on the local and state. That's what nullification is about. So, thumbs up to people in San Francisco. And keep being vigilant. And exercise your natural-born rights to the fullest, including the right to carry. And I say that out of love. All right? All right, folks, that is it. I thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share us throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, when you send something that's interesting and want to check out, whatever you do, please address your correspondence with decorum. Plus, I will leave all my footnotes, including social media sites and email addresses on my Spreaker page. So, show me some love, all right? Okay, my friends, once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that the demoniac resistance helped for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading the love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.